Today, we're going to dive into one of the most incredible stories from early Islamic history. It's a story that's all about injustice, but also about a level of endurance that's just hard to fathom. And it's about relief, coming from a place no one expected. This is the story of the Siege of Shib Abi Talib. So to get what's going on, you have to picture Mecca, about 7 years into the Prophet's mission. Islam is growing, and as it grows, the hostility from the ruling tribe, the Quraish, is just getting more and more intense. Things were really reaching a boiling point, and they came up with a plan they thought would crush this new faith for good. And just listen to the terms of their plan. This was an absolute total boycott. It wasn't just a disagreement. The leaders of the Quraysh made a pact to completely sever all ties. No marrying their women, no giving their women in marriage, no buying, no selling, not even speaking to them. It was a strategy for complete and total social and economic suffocation. Yeah, this wasn't just some verbal agreement they made on the fly. No, they drafted a formal declaration, a literal pact of injustice. They wrote down these cruel terms and sealed the document. The goal was simple, and it was brutal. Isolate the Prophet's entire clan, the Banu Hashim and the Banu Muttalib, and basically starve them out until they gave him up. And to give this pact an almost unbreakable, sacred kind of authority, they took the scroll and hung it inside the Kaaba itself. I mean, think about that. By putting it in their most holy place, they were trying to give a divine stamp of approval to this horrible injustice, thinking nobody would ever dare to challenge it. So, with the pact in place, the fallout was immediate. The Prophet's entire clan, and this included both the Muslims and the non-Muslims who stood by him out of family loyalty, they were all forced out of Mecca. They were driven into this narrow, barren mountain pass called the Shib Abi Talib. And this valley, well, it would become their prison for 3 years. Let that sink in for a minute. 3 years. Cut off from the world, with supplies just dwindling to nothing, and no way to earn a living. This wasn't some short-term pressure campaign. This was a long, slow, grinding siege meant to break them completely. The suffering, it became almost unimaginable. The historical accounts paint such a grim picture. People were reduced to eating the leaves off of trees. One man describes finding a dried piece of camel's hide, and he had to wash it, burn it, crush it up just to make something he could chew on to survive. That was their daily reality. And maybe the most haunting detail of all is this. The cries of starving children and babies could actually be heard from outside the valley. The leaders of the Quraysh, they knew exactly how much suffering they were causing. They could literally hear it with their own ears, and yet, the siege went on. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. While all this incredible suffering was going on, something remarkable was happening inside that valley. The focus shifts from the physical hardship to the kind of profound spiritual discipline that was being forged in that fire. And this is a question you just have to ask, right? I mean, trapped in that valley were some of the toughest, strongest warriors in all of Arabia, men like Hamza and Omar. These guys were more than capable of fighting back. So why didn't they? Well, the answer is a direct command from the Prophet for absolute patience, absolute restraint. Now, you have to understand how radical this was for their time. In that tribal culture, honor was everything, and it was defended with violence. Retaliation wasn't just an option, it was expected. And yet for 3 full years, not a single arrow was fired, not one punch was thrown. This was so much more than just endurance. It was a revolutionary kind of training in self-control and obedience to a higher principle. So what was happening was that their entire definition of power was being rewritten. It wasn't about who could swing a sword the hardest, but about who could endure injustice with the most faith. That siege became a training ground, forging a community built not on knee-jerk reactions, but on a deep, unshakable resolve. So after 3 long years, things finally started to change. And the first crack in the whole boycott didn't come from some miracle, but from the human heart, from conscience. Some of the Quraysh themselves just couldn't stand the injustice anymore. It all started with one man, Hisham ibn Arm. He'd been secretly sneaking food to his relatives in the valley. Racked with guilt, he decided he had to do more. So he started working in the shadows, strategically approaching other noblemen one by one, appealing to their sense of honor, to their humanity, until he had secretly put together a group of 5 influential men who all agreed this boycott was a disgrace, and it had to end. Their plan was pretty simple, but it was incredibly bold. They would all go to the Kaaba, the center of Meccan public life, and in front of all the other leaders, they would publicly condemn the pact. They were going to renounce the whole thing and demand its destruction, forcing a confrontation right out in the open. But at the very same time, this human plan was coming together. A divine plan was already in motion. And this is where the story takes a miraculous turn, running on a parallel track to that conspiracy of conscience. So the Prophet went to his uncle, Abu Talib, who was his biggest protector. He told him that he had received a revelation from God himself. And the revelation was this: the unjust scroll hanging inside the Kaaba, the very symbol of their oppression, had been almost completely destroyed by termites. Well, this set up an absolutely incredible showdown. Abu Talib went to the leaders of the Quraish and laid down a challenge. He told them what his nephew had said, and he basically made a wager. If the scroll is destroyed, like he says, you have to end this boycott. But if it's still intact, I will hand him over to you. The Quraysh, totally confident he was bluffing, agreed to the deal. So they go into the Kaaba, they take down the scroll, and there it was. Just as the Prophet had said, it was completely eaten away by insects. The only words left on the tattered remains of the parchment were, "In your name, O Allah." The miracle was undeniable, and it happened at the exact same time the 5 noblemen were making their move. So, with the pact literally destroyed and the political will to continue it completely collapsing, the siege was finally over. This led to a resolution that would have a legacy that lasts to this day. And just like that, the boycott was officially declared finished. After 3 years of starvation, of isolation, of just immense suffering, the Prophet's clan could finally leave that desolate valley and return to their homes in Mecca. Their endurance had finally been met with relief. But that sacrifice was never forgotten. Years later, a verse of the Quran was revealed that set up a special honor specifically for the Prophet's relatives. This share was given to the clans of Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib. And scholars explain it's because they were the ones who stood by the Prophet during the siege, who endured it all out of loyalty when so many others had abandoned him. Their steadfastness was basically enshrined forever. It wasn't just a moment in history, it became a part of Islamic law, a permanent reminder of their loyalty. Those 3 years of patient endurance were rewarded with a divine honor meant to be remembered by every generation to come. So, as we wrap this up, the story really leaves us with a deep question to think about. When we're faced with overwhelming injustice, where does our true strength actually lie? Is it in our ability to fight back with force, or is it in our capacity to endure with a disciplined patience, trusting that relief will eventually come